So thank you for coming back, and after Rick's incredible talk this morning, it was very provocative, and a lot of those issues are very near and dear to our heart, and I think would have certainly been thrilling to Howard Wise, who founded Electronic Arts Intermix. We're coming up on our 40th anniversary in 2011. EAI was founded in 1971 by Howard Wise, who was a gallerist, and as I was saying, explaining earlier, Howard's family was rather well off. I think his father invented car paint or airplane paint or something like that. So Howard had quite a lot of financial freedom and came to New York, was a gallerist on 57th Street, and at first was showing European painting and then became more and more interested in avant-garde art. And I think part of that was because Howard at root was interested in the societal function of art, the social value of art, and felt very passionately about it, especially in the context of the late 1960s, 1970s in America. So this is his gallery door on 57th Street. And that's Howard with a piece, I'm forgetting the artist's name unfortunately, but just some examples of the kinds of art he would show in his gallery. He was especially interested in any art that integrated technology in it, so he was supporting artists working in the then kinetic art and light art movements. There at the bottom you can see him with a Laszlo Moholy-Nagy's light space modulator from the 1920s. And there are other interactive pieces. And this is an image of Howard being seen in a piece called Wipe Cycle at the first exhibition in the United States devoted to television as a creative medium. It was called TV as a Creative Medium in 1969. And Howard was responding to the then emergent video format technology. Sony is, maybe is well known now. Sony released the first quote-unquote portable video technology in the late 1960s. And this was a really exciting time for, well, in Howard's words, it was a very exciting time because it offered a point of access into television. And one of the things that was happening, and actually in his manifesto for Electronic Arts Intermix, Howard, even though he's coming from the art world, was talking pretty much exclusively about the potential for television as a new space for the exhibition and display of artists' video and artists' television. He saw it as a really exciting and dynamic new space to enter into that was outside of the gallery. And in fact, in his closing letter, he decided to close his gallery in 1970 to found EAI. And in his closing letter, he has this wonderful quote. I don't know if you can read it there, so I'm going to read it out. This is Howard. The most important considerations which have impelled me to make this decision are that many artists, among them some of the most adventuresome, are focusing their energies on works of such scope that there can only be hinted at in the gallery and cannot be shown or realized there. These artists are going out of the gallery into the environment, the sky, the ocean, even into outer space. Others are seeking imaginative ways of utilizing modern technology to humanize people instead of for commercial or destructive purposes, which dehumanize us all. So that's, I think, a perfect characterization of Howard's position regarding the potential for video and the potential for artists working with technology, and also his interest, which is reflective of what was happening in the art world in the late 1960s and 70s in general, which was trying to get out of the gallery, out of the mausoleum type context, or it was then seen as the mausoleum type context of the museum. And this is I think a cover for the catalog for the TV as a Creative Medium exhibition. And these are a few works that were in the show. The bottom there is the piece called Wipe Cycle. That's Charlotte Moorman, obviously, and collaborating with Nam June Paik. And this is in the 1970s, and Rick referred to this. People did not, even though video was becoming accessible to consumers, it was still not that accessible. artists and individuals who wanted to experiment with video editing really had to rely on outside editing facilities. And so one of EAI's primary roles early on was to provide an editing suite that was actually initially 24 hours. And artists would come there and spend all night working on their works. That's the editing facility there up in the corner. And I think that this is a diagram of how to work the equipment. And a lot of the material that I'm showing you in the slide presentation is actually, it can be found on our website. I'll talk about it in a minute. Project that we have called the Kinetic History Project, which is a repository for these really amazing primary documents. But this was, so in the analog world, artists and individuals really relied on editing, the editing facilities at EAI. In Howard's manifesto for Electronic Arts Intermix, as I said, he's talking about television. He characterized video in this way that I think is really great. He talked about video as being portable television. And again, it was really seen as a point of access into what had been, television had been a prohibitive space, and now it was a creative space. And I'm reading a really interesting book right now. I'm not quite finished with it. Lucas Hildebrand's book, Inherent Vice, which I think is a really good, I know we don't want to talk about copyright issues, but what I like about this book is that it makes a very good parallel between the development of video formats. He really fetishizes VHS and shows how the emergent video technology paralleled shifts in copyright legislation in the United States. And I think it's a really thorough and really important outlining of how those things happened in tandem. So I think that video technology and its development, specifically the videotape recorder, cannot be discussed without at least without thinking about parallel developments in the copyright legislation. This is a really great image showing the scale. There's a pack of Winston cigarettes there to show the scale of different formats. And again, an image just to embody the very physical, very tangible nature of analog formats. And what I like about Lucas Hildebrand's book is that he's also making a distinction, and this is something that I thought maybe we could talk about in general today, which is the important distinction between the analog world and the digital world. And something that we're really facing as an archive is, of course, there's a lot of, once everything goes digital, there's this sense that it's perfect and that can replace the analog world, and that if you put things on file formats because it's easy and it's accessible, it is a way of archiving work, but digitization is not preservation. And so something that we're really having to educate people about is that there's a real cost, there's a real expense for us to maintain our archive of nearly 3,000 titles, a lot of them being now obsolete tape formats like half-inch open reel tapes, pneumatic tapes, that are quite bulky, and we have this real physical thing that we have to grapple with. It's not just strictly file-based, and there's a cost. As I was explaining, in the United States, we don't actually receive a lot of public funding. About 70% of our income comes from what we do, which is the distribution of our tapes for public display and use in cultural institutions and for educational purposes. So I just wanted to talk about where we are today. We're really focusing on our site as a central location for information about our organization. We take it very seriously as an online, a published online catalog. And as we're moving into our 40th anniversary, we're hoping to really make our site even more dynamic and more of an educational resource. As I was mentioning, one thing that we're really focused on is our Kinetic History Project, which talks about our early history and is just loaded with film and video clips. This is a horrible screenshot, but just some of the films that you could watch through our site. Primary documents, interviews. This is a work in progress. We actually still need to launch more of the chapters in this section of our catalog, but it's just loaded with really great scans documents from the 1970s and helps to give a sense of that context. This is a drawing of Eric Siegel's video color synthesizer and a copy of a patent of one of his synthesizers. These are posters from some festivals early on in the early 1970s. Howard, again, because I think he saw himself as more of a patron of the arts, EAI really functioned as an umbrella for a lot of other projects, including the kitchen and early computer art festivals and avant-garde festivals that Charlotte Moorman was involved with. And then this is our online resource guide, which is meant to be a resource for artist curators, archivists, museum professionals, and educators to really serve as in an advisory capacity on the exhibition, the collecting, and the preservation of media art. So we have been developing this, and we actually need to now update it to discuss the wonderful and wild world of HD, and we're working on that now. But there's an exhibition section. Again, there are interviews, case studies. Here's case study Rhizome. This is about collecting media, preservation, and then we have a very basic guide to formats, a glossary. The other thing that we're working on, and I'm really excited about this, is we're beginning to digitize the entire collection and offer it for streaming online. And right now, we offer this as a password-protected section of our site, although we're fairly open about who can have that password. Although it's somewhat limited by our resources because we don't have, we use an outside service to host our, to give us some bandwidth because we can't do that internally. But we're hoping to, again, really develop this section of our site moving forward to have online podcast interviews with artists, maybe featured videos that we select per month. But we're just finding that the more we provide access to the works, to curators and to scholars, that is really helping to bolster what we do as a distributor. And I guess I just want to be provocative and say that something that I do think should be a part of the conversation today is, I hope I've conveyed that our founding mission was one of access. Our founding mission was really invested in how media art could be expanded beyond the confines of the repository of the gallery. However, we are placed in the art world, and the art world, of course, is built around a scarcity model. And so I was just having an interesting conversation about, and I thought it was a beautiful way of characterizing our position, which is that on the one hand, our job is to really create value and a sense of value for these works within the context of the art world. But then we also have this mission of access, and we need to figure out how we can accomplish both of those goals. And I don't really have an answer. I think this is something that we need to develop, and it's really why I'm thrilled to be here, because I have to tell you, every day in my job, I face both sides of the issue. On the one hand, we have students or actually a lot of individuals who find our fees prohibitive, and I hear that. And we want to provide access to our collection. On the other hand, I'm hearing from commercial gallerists something else altogether, which is that they're terrified by what we do, and they think that we're completely ruining their ability to sell video as editions, and maybe from their perspective they're right on a certain level. But I'm actually really happy to have conversations with both sides. I'll sit down with the gallerists and I'll talk to them about how we can actually work together instead of having these secret strategies to make video a valuable, saleable commodity. On the other hand, I really do want to hear from individuals how we can make this work more accessible, because if it's not, as Rick really said well this morning, if it's not accessible, it's going to die. So I think I'll end there.